Hello students, we're going to focus on the pinch technique for this lesson. This is one of our hand building techniques, and what hand building means is you're building things with your hands. And as you can see here on the screen, that's pretty much what the pinch technique looks like. So what is the pinch technique? We're creating hand-built forms by squeezing clay between your thumb and fingers and other parts of your hand. It's a beginner's method in hand building, so this is a method that you can even teach to young children. It's typically used to create pinch pots, but from those forms you can also create other things, not just pinch pots. So basically how it works is you start with a ball of clay. You push your thumb into that clay, and then you start pinching around the rim. And as you keep pinching it, the walls widen and they become a little more thin. And then you start to develop this kind of like a bowl shape. So what is a pinch pot? It's an ancient form of pottery. Archaeologists have actually found pinch pots that date back over 20,000 years. Remember, pottery is an ancient form of art. Basically, it's a pot created using the pinch technique, and a pot is a type of vessel. So here are some images of pinch pots. So you can see they kind of look like a bowl. So the key to creating a great pinch pot is to control the turning rhythm while keeping the amount of pressure even for each pinch, because if you rush the process, the walls actually become uneven and you can possibly over pinch your clay. And visually, what it looks like is you have a ball of clay and you can see how the walls start to thin and widen out as you keep pinching. So the lesson objective is to demonstrate the ability to create a pinch pot with even walls and a somewhat curved bottom. And for your mastery check, does your pinch pot have vertical walls and a somewhat curved bottom? And when cut in half, does the pinch pot have an even thickness of about 1/4 inch thick and no corners? So basically, when I cut your pinch pot in half, we're looking for something like that. We do not want this. That is too thick. And we don't want that either. That is too thick over here. It's a little uneven and it's way too thin at the bottom. So let's learn how to actually make a pinch pot.
Here's how to make a pinch pot. So this is an example of a finished pinch pot. Notice a pinch pot has fairly vertical walls with a curved bottom. This is the most basic hand building technique. This is a hand building technique I could teach to little children, and it's a really good way to get to know the thickness of the clay walls because you can't always see it, right? I have to feel down here to figure out how thick the walls are. So we're aiming for something like this. So how do you start? So you take your clay, make sure it's wedged. Now this is way too much clay for a pinch pot. You want about a baseball sized piece of clay. So I'm going to take my wire cutter and cut off part of my clay. I don't need all of it. And what you're going to do is you need to form your clay into a sphere or a ball. You can roll it on the table to make a ball. You can also kind of smack it into a ball. Again, you only need about a baseball or apple-sized piece of clay. You do not need a huge piece of clay. Do not use all the clay in your bag for this, but do not use a tiny amount. So I have a sphere here. To start, you're going to stick your thumb into the clay. Don't go all the way through. I'm holding it with my other hand, and then I'm starting to pinch the walls. And as I'm pinching, I am rotating the clay in my hand. Now, you can do this left-handed or right-handed, but you want to make sure that you're continually rotating the clay in your hand. And we're not pinching very hard, because if we pinch really hard, really quickly, we're going to end up with walls that are not consistent in thickness. And so as you're pinching, kind of feel around and just think, what's the thickness of the walls that I am pinching? We are not pinching on the table. Again, we're holding it in our hands. So notice I'm pinching with my thumb and forefinger. I'm also pinching with my thumb and my other fingers together. Think, what's the thickness of the walls that I am pinching? We are not pinching on the table. Again, we're holding it in our hand. So notice I'm pinching with my thumb and forefinger. I'm also pinching with my thumb and my other fingers together. And at some point you do have to pinch down inside your pinch pot. So we don't want to push too hard, so you can actually brace the bottom of the pinch pot with your palm. And again, I'm still pinching and rotating. If I do this too quickly, I will end up with walls that are uneven. I'm not going to pinch the rim either. I'm going to keep it fairly thick for now because sometimes students over pinch the rim and then the rim ends up really, really thin. Why am I rotating the clay? Because I want to make sure I'm getting even pinches throughout. Because I don't want to pinch a lot in one area and then not pinch enough in the other area. Now, while you're working on your pinch pot, you're welcome to bring it to me and I will touch it. I'll look at it. What I really pay attention to is this portion. We don't want this to happen where the corners of your pinch pot end up really thick. One, because, well, there's too much clay there. Two, there might be an air pocket. So that's why a lot of times students have to really pay attention to this corner rim. Now it is possible to over pinch the walls where the walls end up pretty thin. So just be aware. You have to really quiet your mind as you're feeling the clay. And again, we are looking for something like this, where the walls are fairly vertical. So do not pinch like this. If you're pinching like this, you end up pulling the walls out and you end up with more like a bowl. We don't want a bowl because often the bottom is too wide and then the walls spread out. That is what we're aiming for. So I'm going to continue to pinch. And it's also sometimes hard to tell how thick your walls actually are because the rim doesn't tell us anything about the thickness of the overall pinch pot. Now, if you notice your clay is really soft, that's good. Makes it easier for you to pinch, but also makes it easy for you to over pinch. So again, be liberal with your pinching. Now, at some point, you do have to see me because you're going to do a mastery check. And what is your mastery check? I'm going to cut the clay in half. I'm going to cut your pinch pot in half. We're looking for walls with about even thickness, about 1/4 inch thick. It's okay if it's a little bit thicker, but if it's like 1/2 inch, we have a problem. I'm also going to just look at the general visual appearance of your pinch pot. Do we have walls that are semi-vertical? So I'm going to go ahead and actually cut this one in half. I've been working on this for about 5.5 minutes. Been working on it while I've been demoing for you. I'm going to cut it in half for you. I'm going to take a wire cutter, carefully cut it in half. Now let's check and see what happened. Okay, now we do have walls that are fairly vertical. Though the bottom, this is a great thickness for the pinch pot. This is about a little over 1.5 inch thick. But notice the corners. They're a little thick. We probably could have thinned them out a little bit more. To be honest, if this was a student's work, I wouldn't be that concerned because the walls are pretty good consistent thickness. Yes, when you're done, you're going to have to wedge it all back together and save it in your bag.